TV10 viewers, welcome to our exclusive interview with Wahi Rakesh, who is the CNBC Africa's founder and vice chairman. Welcome to the interview, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning in Kigali.
We'd wish to know more about you as someone who has a lot of experience in this field.
As a family, we've been based in Dubai for the last 26 years. Over the years, we saw the need to increase the aggregation of content from other parts of Africa as well, because you cannot actually have a very credible source of information if you don't have reporters on ground.
This particular field, which is business reporting, according to you, what are the challenges that African journalists face while reporting on business economics?
Other than the 3 or 4 economies around Africa which have capital markets, which means places like South Africa, Nigeria, to some extent Kenya, there's very little knowledge or information on the businesses, because in these countries you have a reasonably well developed stock exchange, and therefore you're able to report on the listed companies and what's going on. There's a little more information is a little more available. In the other 50 countries there is a big gap, because private companies don't tend to talk too much about what they're doing. They try to remain under the radar, so getting that information is difficult. So we rely a lot on policymakers in terms of what the economic trends are in the country. We follow the currencies, we speak to the reserve banks, and then tap into the sectors that are progressing.
Which advice do you give journalists and media houses? Some of the journalists that we talk to say that it's not easy for them to cover such stories because it requires time and sometimes much money than other fields that they can report. And some of the media houses are not able to have that capacity of building that career. Which advice do you give them?
I think it's, this is a complex subject. It's not just in emerging markets, this is all over the world. Business is a niche, and you'll find that journalists that want to report on channels like ours, like CNBC, they're few and far between, because they want to do economics and then get into the business side of it. Most people are attractive by different genres. Some go to sports, some go to general entertainment, others go to current affairs. Those are slightly easier subjects. I'm not in any way trying to undermine the importance of it, but they're a little easier because for economic news you have to actually go a lot deeper into the fundamentals of, it's not just about journalism, it's also understanding the fundamentals of how business works. So I think training is very important. We spend a lot of time on training our journalists and equipping them with what is required to be able to report correctly. It's true that you have to spend resources on making sure that our journalists are present. So at the beginning of every year we look at the calendar of what we want to achieve, and therefore we've partnered with very strategic players like the World Economic Forum. We make sure that we are at all their events. We spend resource into that. We've got partners who support us in those in our presence there. We also cover a lot of other conferences around the world, around the continent, and therefore you need to know that these are areas that are critical for reporting. These are areas that we are a must, where we have to have our journalists, and then there are certain luxuries where you may or may not be, because you cannot cover everything judiciously. And then the online side of the business is now becoming so rampant and growing exponentially that the complete business of reporting is going to change. It's going to get revolutionized with disruptive technologies. Citizen journalism is coming up. You'll be able to access things happening in different parts of the world so easily, and we need to change with time in terms of how we're going to address these issues of people in the future.
My very final question, how does reporting on business contribute to African economies?
This is the most critical part of it, because historically very few people have taken responsibility for talking about all the positive things that happen in Africa. It's very easy for people to talk about the negatives. When you haven't really done anything substantive in your life, you can find fault with what others are doing. What people fail to realize is that if they were put in those situations, what would they do differently? And firstly, whether they'd be up to taking those challenges. So I think first and foremost, people need to really introspect on what they're trying to say when they see somebody trying to make a difference or they're trying to do something. So there's a huge responsibility that sits with people when they are putting these stories together and they're reporting on them. We spend a lot of our time with our journalists in terms of what they should be looking at in terms of the meat of the matter, being respectful towards people who are trying to make a difference, talk about balanced stories in a responsible manner. So it's not just about talking about what is bad, also talk about what they're trying to do to fix it. The challenges, a similar challenge, a flood in the US is very different than having a natural calamity in a small country in Africa. It's about the amount of resources that you have available. It's the training, the skills. No government, no people want to see tragedies. There is not a single leader that would be happy to see an accident that wasn't handled properly, a bridge collapse that did not get managed properly, and therefore they all try within the resources, and therefore you need to say these are the challenges, this is what they need to do, and the government then needs to communicate in a frank manner as to what they're doing to make sure that these things don't get repeated.